Hi everyone, welcome to another medical terminology mini lesson. In this lesson, we are going to talk about the structure and function of the skin. So just give me a second, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so the integumentary system. The integumentary system consists of not only the skin, but its associated accessory organs. So the accessory organs include the hair, the nails, the sweat glands, and the oil glands. Sometimes the skin is called the cutaneous membrane. So let's add cutaneous membrane. And it consists of 3 layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous or hypodermis layer. So you'll probably notice some similarities between those terms. So we have root words that sound similar. So you have cutaneo right here in cutaneous membrane, cutaneo, and derm or dermato, which also refer to skin. Integument means to cover. So although we refer to it in the body meaning the skin, it literally means to cover. All right. So the skin is our barrier. It's not very easily broken, but it can be broken, but it acts as a protective barrier against a lot of things, against infectious organisms, against UV light, against bacteria, lots of things. The skin helps to protect us. So let's talk about some functions of the skin. So obviously the first one is protection. So I'm going to add that over here, protection. Protection from what? Protection from injury, protection from chemicals, protection from UV light, protection from microbes, protection from any kind of toxins from getting into our body. What's another function of the skin? Water. It protects us. Our skin is water resistant. So it protects water from getting in and it protects water from escaping. So water resistance is an important function of our skin. So water resistance is another important function. Temperature regulation is an important function of the skin. Temperature regulation. Let's put that here. Regulation. Okay, temperature regulation is an important function of the skin. So because of all the blood vessels that run through the skin, if our body gets too hot, our blood vessels dilate and allow heat to rise to the surface and dissipate heat. And if our body gets too cold, our blood vessels will constrict and shunt blood to the deeper structures and to keep our body warm. All right. Another function of our skin is vitamin D synthesis. So our skin helps produce vitamin D using sunlight. Let's see if I can move it down. There you go. Vitamin D synthesis using sunlight. And vitamin D is important in the body because it helps to allow the body to utilize calcium. And when we get to the endocrine system, we'll talk about how important calcium is in the body to regulate nerve conduction and cardiac function. So that's an important vitamin in the body. All right. The skin is also important for sensation. Has lots of nerve endings that allow us to feel and sense the world around us. And excretion and secretion. Excretion and secretion. So these two sound very similar, but they actually mean different things. So oh, that says exception. Sorry, hold on. Let's fix that. Excretion and secretion. There we go. Excretion means to get rid of a waste product from the body. So the skin excretes waste products. So think about sweat. You're secreting a waste product. And secretion means you're producing something and moving it somewhere else. So in secretion, you're secreting like our oil glands in the layers of the skin produce and secrete sebum or oils to the surface of the skin. So excretion, you're getting rid of a waste product like sweat, and secretion, you're producing something and moving it somewhere else. That's secretion. Okay? And then your book also describes some what they call social functions of skin. I don't know if I really agree with that kind of terminology, but we'll go with it. Social functions include things like blushing when you're embarrassed or intimidated, and then going pale when you're frightened. That's really an autonomic nervous system response. I don't know how social it is, but there you go. That's their definition of social functions. So we'll throw it in there. Okay, so those are the functions of the skin. Okay, so now that we've talked about the functions of the skin, let's talk about the layers of the skin. We're going to work from the outside, most superficial layer to the deeper layers. So the most superficial layer, the outside layer, is the epidermis. Let's look at some of these word parts first. So you can see the epidermis is here. It has that layer or that root word derm in there. The next deeper layer is dermis, that also has the root derm. And then below that is the hypodermis, and again, that has that root derm in there, the prefix hypo meaning below. So right now we're going to look at the epidermis. It has the root word derm in there, and then the prefix epi, which means above or upon. All right, so we're looking at the epidermis. So the epidermis is the most superficial layer. It is a layer of protection. It helps to withstand toxins and pollution. It also sheds the outermost layer. So we're continuously getting a new layer of skin throughout our life. So the outermost layer is actually dead cells, dead, hardened, waterproof cells on the outermost layer. And those dead cells are actually cells called keratinocytes. Keratin, let me write that down. Keratinocytes. Keratin is the hardened, dead substance that forms a waterproof barrier. So that helps keep our skin tough and waterproof and provides that layer of protection. All right, so we went from the epidermis, the outermost layer. The next layer is the dermis. Now remember, the epidermis is all not much going on. The outermost layer is dead cells, keratinocytes. You can see there's this irregular border. It's a very distinct border between the epidermis and the dermis. The dermis is a lot thicker. You can see right here it's a lot thicker. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in the dermis. It contains the hair follicles, it contains the blood vessels, it contains the oil glands and the sweat glands, it contains the sensory nerve endings, it will contain the roots of the nail beds. All the action is happening in the dermis. So the dermis is much thicker than the epidermis, and it contains a lot of collagen. Remember, we talked about collagen before. The collagen is produced by the fibroblasts, and it's got a lot of strength and flexibility. It's got, again, lots of blood vessels. It's got all those accessory organs, the sweat glands, the oil glands. So lots of stuff going on in there. All right. And again, that border between the two is very irregular. Let's see if I have, gives us that protection. Now this slide shows us the layers of just the epidermis until you get down here. So see where it says dermis down here? Everything up until that point is all epidermis. So I said the epidermis can have 4 or 5 layers depending on where the skin is located. Tougher, thicker skin, like on the soles of our feet or the palms of our hands, will have 5 layers. The thinner skin will have 4 layers. So these layers are called strata. That is the plural, strata. Each one is called a stratum. So stratum is singular, strata is plural. And strata just simply means layer, okay? So the outermost layer of dead keratinocytes is the stratum corneum. And corneum comes from the Latin meaning having a horn, or that tough layer is corn.
So the stratum corneum is that tough layer of dead keratinocytes. The next layer is the stratum lucidum, right here, the stratum lucidum. This is the layer that may or may not be present. So this layer is only found in the thicker skin, like in the palms of our hands or the soles of our feet. And under a microscope, this looks very thin or translucent. And again, it's made up of keratinocytes, which is that protein that becomes keratin. So that may or may not be present. The next layer is the stratum granulosum. And the term granulosum comes from the Latin word meaning a small grain or granule. And granulosum, it helps to waterproof. It forms a waterproof barrier. The stratum spinosum is the next layer down here. And spinosum just means spiny. It's the Latin term for spiny. So these cells down here, again, will form and then die off and become the stratum granulosum, which forms the stratum lucidum, which eventually forms the stratum corneum. Down here is the stratum basale, the deepest layer down here, and basale just means the base or most deepest layer. So the stratum basale or base layer is down here. And you can see these other little structures down here. There's a tactile cell. Tactile means touch. Melanocyte, melano means black. This is a melanocyte that will produce melanin or the pigment cell. A dendritic cell, a dendrite is a nerve cell. So this is going to give some of our sensation. And then here's a sensory nerve ending that comes from a dendrite. All right. And then it will lead into our dermis, which is the deeper layer. All right. So those are our 5 layers. Now your book gives you a mnemonic. A mnemonic is a memory device to help you remember the layers. So it gives you a mnemonic to help you remember how to remember. So it's C, L, G, S, B. Those are the layers. Corneum, stratum, the stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basale. And your book gives you the memory device or mnemonic. Can Lucy give some blood? Going from the outermost layer to the innermost layer. So those are your strata if you can remember. Can Lucy give some blood? All right, so those are your layers. This one shows you a little bit more of what's going on in the dermis. There's that border again. Here's your hair follicle. No layers like the epidermis, but everything is embedded in the dermis. All right, so this would be the oil glands. There's your blood vessels. All right, not a good picture of a nerve ending. Well, this would probably be a nerve ending. All right, the muscles for the hair follicles, we'll talk about those in a different video. And then below the dermis, the next layer, the epidermis is out here, the dermis is here, and the most deep, yeah, that's good grammar. The deepest layer below the epidermis is the hypodermis. Remember, hypo means below, and another term for the hypodermis is the subcutaneous layer. Okay, so subcutaneous layer is down here. Some people argue that it's technically not part of the integumentary system. Your book includes it as part of the integumentary system, also called the subcutaneous. It houses the layer of fat down here. All right, so that's the hypodermis. Okay, let's talk about a couple of terms that your book has thrown in, just so we can cover what's in the textbook. Biopsy is one. The term biopsy includes the prefix bio, meaning life, and opsy, meaning to view. And basically, it's removing tissue from a person who is alive and sending it to the lab to determine the makeup of the tissue and to give a laboratory analysis, basically to see what the tissue is made up for. And usually that is given to determine if there is cancer. So another term is carcinoma. And carcinoma includes the word parts carcin, which means cancer, and then oma means tumor. So oma is the word part for tumor. And finally, another term is cryosurgery or cryotherapy. Cryo means cold. So I think they use the term cryosurgery. So cryo means cold or ice cold, and surge means surgery, obviously, to cut or operate. So they basically use a freezing technique to cut through skin. Or you may have seen like cryotherapy, they use cold therapy in like facials and things like that. Another term they use, or they have in the textbook, is esthetician. And be careful the spelling here. It's ESTHETICIAN. ESTHETICIAN. I have to double check that spelling myself. Esthetician, tricky to pronounce as well. That comes from the term beauty, the Greek term for beauty, and then the ending here, let me get my little pen, ICIAN, ishin, comes from the term specialist. So esthetician is someone who specializes in beauty. Yeah, hard to say. So an esthetician would be somebody who specializes in giving facials and works on cosmetology and making somebody beautiful. So I think that about covers it for this little mini lesson. I will catch up with you guys in the next lesson. Thanks for watching.